This one's personal for me, about IVF and reproductive care. When my wife and I, my wife of 30 years, because yes, we share family values, we just make our own damn choices about our family.
You, with your keen understanding of how this works, especially from National Guard families, I can tell you this, having been one of those that came back, we were in support of OEF, but sitting in there with OIF veterans, when we came back, they showed us the horse whisperer and told us to be nice when we went home.
The reliance that men and women in uniform have to be able to have on their fellow brothers and sisters. But there are National Guardsmen who served with him in that period who felt abandoned by him, the man that was supposed to command and take them forward. They're now speaking out saying they did feel like he left them behind.
Democratic Congressman Jason Crow appeared on Fox News, and I want to play some of this for you. Specifically, the parts I'll show you relate to him defending vice presidential candidate Tim Walz in the wake of this constant repetitive line of attacks against him relating to his military service. And MAGA is saying two things first, being he abandoned his unit right when they were being deployed to Iraq, the second being that he misrepresented what it was that he did while serving the country. And all of this really bothers me. We talked about Adam Kinzinger making some good points about if you start doing this to people, veterans, people who, in the case of Tim Walz, served 24 years in the military, and you start trying to find any little way you can critique them, and any little sentence an example is, instead of saying a weapon of war, he said a weapon I held in war, meaning in the military he carried weapons of war. Two words were a little bit incorrect one time years ago, and they're using that because he wasn't in a combat zone to discredit all these years of service. And you start doing that to people. You're disincentivizing people with the type of character that we want getting into politics, and that's really dangerous. But here, Jason Crow does a nice job of shutting down these talking points and bringing back to focus the important takeaway.
Now, Colorado Congressman Jason Crow. Congressman, welcome. And to both of you, thank you for your service, because both of you have worn the uniform, and we appreciate that beyond your congressional service as well. So let's start here with the stolen valor conversation that we had with Senator Cotton. We talked about this timeline in February of 2005 that Governor Walz was notified it's possible that his team was going to be called up. In March of that year, March 20, 2005, he says this: as Command Sergeant Major, I have a responsibility not only to ready my battalion for Iraq, but also to serve if called on. I'm dedicated to serving my country to the best of my ability, whether that is in Washington, D.C. or in Iraq. But, Congressman, by the time his team was called up, he had retired. And despite that statement about he would serve if called on, he ultimately didn't.
Yeah, Shannon, thanks for having me. You know, military service is tough. And serving in a military unit is tough. So you have to be able to rely on your fellow veteran, your fellow service member. You know, that is a deep ethos in the military, that we have each other's backs. So there's really very few things that sadden me more when you see a veteran maligning and attacking falsely another veteran. And that's why it's so sad to see Senator Vance turning on Tim Walz and perpetuating these false attacks. Tim Walz served for 24 years in uniform. He started when he was 17, enlisted as a private, just like me. I actually have a special place in my heart for fellow privates. These are the junior enlisted. You start at the bottom and you work your way up, just like I did when I was in the military. And what's really exciting about Tim Walz is not only did he serve for 24 years, that he held the position of Command Sergeant Major in his unit, which is the highest enlisted position in the unit, but he is now the highest enlisted person to ever be on a presidential ticket. That is exciting for the middle class. That is exciting for working Americans, and I'm excited for this ticket.
Well,
and before the follow-up question, which I will show you again, all of this, really gets under my skin, because we've seen cases of politicians now. I'm blanking on the one that was somewhat recently, but completely fabricate military service, and people out in the world completely fabricate that's stolen valid. And to be levying such a harsh, severe term against someone who has legitimate valor and should be respected for his service seems so against the pro-veterans rhetorical stance that Republicans pretend like they espouse. And again, behind the scenes, after you've served 24 years, people are acting like he knew they were going to go to Iraq. And so we went, I'm out right, as he was planning to stay longer. But he had planned his life around all right. And now is about the time I'm going to retire from the military. And after he'd already made that clear to his unit, there were rumors that his unit would go to Iraq, potentially. but nothing was clear, so we're just going to wait, continue putting his future plans on hold. Not knowing, are these rumors going to be going around for years? What's going to happen? And so before, formally, they were notified that they would be going to Iraq. He'd already requested retire, it was accepted, and then he retired, and to twist that into he abandoned, and some people trying to blame him for deaths that happened within his unit. Oh, it's so low character. Here's a follow-up.
The reliance that men and women in uniform have to be able to have on their fellow brothers and sisters, but there are National Guardsmen who served with him in that period who felt abandoned by him, the man that was supposed to command and take them forward. They're now speaking out saying they did feel like he left them behind.
No, they are not, Shannon, just to be very clear. Overwhelmingly, the people that served with Tim Waltz
but there are a couple of
said that he served with distinction. Yeah, and military units are like families, Shannon. They're like families, right? Your brothers and sisters, and they don't always get along. People have personal grievances. People are angry at each other, and it's very sad to see that. I don't know what's motivating these folks that have spoken out. I'm sure there's some kind of personal grievance there. But overwhelmingly, people who serve with Tim Waltz know what type of person he is. Even those who are Republicans, even those who said that they're not going to vote for him, said that he served with distinction. That's the true story here. His record is very clear. And it's very exciting that we're going to have the most senior enlisted person on a presidential ticket in American history. That is a monumental thing.
Yeah, just fantastic job there from Jason Crow. I've been spending a lot of time and just degrades my day in online right-wing space. He's trying to understand deciphering fact from fiction and understand what the attacks are, what is based on a cold truth, what's not. And the thing that was referenced there from Shannon Bream is, I've only heard from one. She said a couple, I don't know if they're a couple, but I've heard from one in an interview person. He served with disparaging him in this way, or at least expressing his belief that he felt abandoned by Tim Walz at that juncture. But then you have others coming out, as was mentioned by Crow, who also served with Walz, saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. One guy, I think we might have watched on the bonus show, I can't remember one guy saying, I'm a Republic, I don't want Walz to win here, I don't like his politics, but these attacks are baseless, and explaining sort of the timeline that I mentioned to you previously, and people should respect the time he did put in, so much longer than 99.9% of Americans. And maybe on a personal level, one of the people in his unit did feel like he should have stayed longer, and has carried that with him. And you combine that maybe with a MAGA ideology, and you get him speaking out again, we don't know. But for all of these people completely outside of the context of the situation, what might be a personal situation to then jump to stolen valor? And he's the reason that people in his unit were killed. Because if he was there, I guess something different would happen. When it's clear before they were formally notified, he had requested after decades of serving. And he could have gotten out way earlier, right? But he chose to stay as long as he did. So point is, this is yet another example of an attack line that I don't think resonates with those key swing voters. I think people are grossed out by these sorts of attacks. As example of, if you're going in right-wing media spaces, the post-millennial who just does awful work all the time. But in unearthed video footage shows, then Representative Tim Walz telling a Gold Star family he was deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Endure during freedom. In 2004, stolen valor confirmed. Confirmed. So I know what you're thinking here. We go. What did he say in this video? Let's see.
You, with your keen understanding of how this works, especially from National Guard families, I can tell you this, having been one of those that came back, we were in support of OEF, but sitting in there with OIF veterans, when we came back, they showed us the horse whisperer and told us to be nice when we went home. And that was the extent of it. That was in 2004. Now, I'm proud to say that because of the people sitting in here and people who came before me, things have changed over the last 4 years. They have not changed enough. But Mr. Kennedy is following and moving something forward that the late senator from Minnesota, Senator Wellstone, advocated so clearly, mental health parity, and this issue of destigmatizing mental health, of understanding. And I being in there and knowing as a first sergeant, know exactly what you're saying, and watching as people aren't trained on this, that there is there's a discrimination that goes against a soldier who has the courage, the fortitude, and as you said, the insight to admit this. So there's a couple things I want.
You know what's so annoying about that? As you can tell, there wasn't at all a misrepresentation of his service. But so many people, what 70–80% of people scroll by, read that description and go, wow, and I bet that video shows it. And they keep scrolling. And then now they have this belief about Tim Walz. He was deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. That wasn't a lie. He didn't say that was to Afghanistan. The post-millennial just doesn't care about actually reporting properly, doesn't do their due diligence, or is being blat dishonest, and doesn't understand that that wasn't just in Afghanistan. And I'm pretty sure it was in Europe that he was deployed, but a part of that operation. But again, how many people see that, read it just in on the video? Wow, I don't have the time to watch the video, gosh, but surely they wouldn't describe it as that if it weren't true. And then think about how just GH it is that they're including that video. And people are mostly of their followers thinking, oh yeah, terrible guy. As the video reveals, he's not inaccurately presenting his service, and he's talking about something so important, it actually shows what he was up to when he was Congress. How his service inspired him to then go into Congress and do work for veterans, in part here, talking about making sure we take care of the mental health of our veterans. And they're wanting people to focus on these bonkers stories, so they don't respect this service. And so they don't focus on incredible moments like this one.
This one's personal for me, about IVF and reproductive care. When my wife and I, my wife of 30 years, because yes, we share family values, we just make our own damn choices about our family. But when we wanted to have children, we went through years of fertility treatment. And I remember it was like it was yesterday, just waiting for good news. And then the phone would ring and you would be tensed up, and then you would hear that the treatments had failed. It would blot out the sun, that you just wanted something so beautiful and so simple to have a child. And then one day, and it wasn't by chance, when that news came and we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope. We named her Hope. I'm not crying, you're crying, so...
Republicans in certain states are waging a war on IVF and other reproductive care, the pro-family party, trying to make it more difficult for people to start families. So don't focus on that, focus on our fairy tales about Walz's service. Sad stuff. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to support this show, you can do so by clicking the join button below.